The bar was dimly lit, the low hum of quiet conversation blending with the occasional clink of glasses. Alex sat at a corner table nursing his drink, staring at the melting ice in his glass. He had always hated this bar. It was James's choice, a place they used to frequent when their relationship was alive with passion. Now, it felt like a relic of better days, a venue soaked in memories that no longer felt like his own. Alex shifted uncomfortably in his seat, loosening his tie. He hadn't planned to come here tonight, but the tension at home had been suffocating. James barely looked at him anymore. Their conversations had dwindled to transactional exchanges about bills and groceries. The intimacy they once shared had been replaced by a cold silence that gnawed at Alex's confidence. For months, he had tried to bridge the gap, but his efforts were met with indifference. A sudden commotion at the bar interrupted his thoughts. A man in a crisp police uniform stepped through the door, his presence commanding immediate attention. He wasn't the kind of cop Alex was used to seeing. There was something about him that seemed larger than life. Broad-shouldered and self-assured, his dark uniform accentuated his powerful build. His gaze swept the room with practiced ease, his expression a mixture of authority and calm. Alex's breath caught as the officer's eyes locked onto his. It was a fleeting moment, but the intensity in that gaze sent a shiver down his spine. He looked away quickly, feeling his cheeks flush. "Excuse me," a deep voice said, startling Alex. He looked up to see the officer standing by his table. Up close, he was even more imposing. The badge on his chest read Ryan, and his name echoed in Alex's mind as if it belonged to a storm. "Yes?" Alex managed to reply, his voice unsteady. "There was an incident outside earlier," Ryan said, his tone professional but not unkind. "I'm asking around to see if anyone saw anything suspicious." Alex shook his head. "I didn't notice anything." Ryan nodded, his eyes lingering on Alex for a moment longer than necessary. "If you remember anything, don't hesitate to reach out." He reached into his pocket and handed Alex a card. Their fingers brushed briefly, and Alex felt a jolt of electricity at the contact. "Thank you," Alex said, clutching the card like it was a lifeline. Ryan's lips curved into a small smile before he moved to the next table. Alex watched him go, unable to shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Alex couldn't stop thinking about Ryan. His confident demeanor, the way his uniform clung to his frame, the subtle warmth in his voice. It wasn't just physical attraction, though that was undeniable. There was something about Ryan that stirred a longing Alex hadn't felt in years. As the bar emptied, Alex remained seated, staring at the card in his hand. It bore Ryan's name and a phone number, along with a note, "Call if you need anything." The message was innocent enough, but Alex couldn't help but read between the lines. He thought about James. About their years together, the good times and the bad. He thought about the nights he lay awake, wondering if James still loved him, if he was still desirable. And now, here was this stranger, someone who had noticed him, who had seen him in a way that James no longer did. Guilt twisted in his stomach, but it was overpowered by a flicker of something else. Hope, perhaps, or excitement. It had been so long since he'd felt seen, let alone wanted. He slipped the card into his pocket and stood to leave. Outside, the cool night air did little to clear his mind. He looked back at the bar, then down the street where Ryan had disappeared hours ago. For the first time in months, Alex felt a spark of possibility. He didn't know what it meant yet, but he knew one thing for certain: his life had changed the moment Ryan walked into that bar. As he walked home, his fingers brushed against the card in his pocket, and his mind raced with questions he wasn't ready to answer. What would happen if he called? What if he didn't? The night stretched ahead, full of uncertainty and quiet temptation. The following evening, Alex stood at the edge of the park, clutching Ryan's card. He had debated coming here for hours, guilt and temptation warring within him. But now that he was here, he couldn't deny the pull that had led him. The park was quiet, the fading sunlight casting long shadows across the neatly trimmed grass. "Alex, A voice called softly behind him. He turned to find Ryan standing there, a calm yet confident expression on his face. Dressed casually in a fitted jacket and dark jeans, he seemed even more magnetic than Alex remembered. The cop's presence felt like gravity, impossible to resist. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Ryan said, his eyes searching Alex's face. Alex managed a small, hesitant smile. "Neither was I." Ryan gestured to a bench beneath a cluster of trees, and they walked together in silence. Alex's heart raced, the proximity to Ryan making his every nerve stand on edge. They sat, and for a moment, neither spoke, the quiet hum of the park filling the space between them. "So," Ryan began, leaning back with a relaxed confidence that contrasted with Alex's anxious posture, "you've been on my mind since last night?" Alex looked up sharply, the admission both thrilling and terrifying. "I don't know what to say to that." Ryan smiled faintly, his gaze steady. "Then don't say anything. Just let me ask, why did you call?" The question cut through Alex's defenses, exposing the raw truth he had been trying to avoid. He swallowed hard, his fingers fidgeting with the edge of his jacket. "I don't know. I shouldn't have. I'm married." Ryan nodded, his expression unreadable. "I figured as much." Alex flinched. "Then why meet me? Why?" Ryan leaned forward, his tone soft yet firm. "Because I saw something in your eyes last night. Something I recognize. A need for connection." The words hit Alex like a physical blow. He wanted to deny it, to defend himself, but the truth sat heavy in his chest. "It's complicated," he muttered. "It always is," Ryan replied. The conversation ebbed into silence again, but this time it was laden with unspoken tension. Ryan reached out, his hand brushing lightly against Alex's. The touch was brief but electric, igniting a fire Alex had suppressed for far too long. "I shouldn't," Alex began, but the protest died on his lips as Ryan leaned closer, his presence overwhelming. "You can walk away," Ryan said softly, his voice carrying no judgment, only understanding. "But if you stay, you're choosing to be honest about what you want. For once." The words sliced through Alex's guilt, exposing the yearning he had buried beneath layers of loyalty and obligation. His breath quickened as Ryan closed the gap between them, their lips meeting in a kiss that felt like both a betrayal and a revelation. Time seemed to stop. The world around them faded, leaving only the intensity of the moment. Alex's heart pounded as he surrendered to the sensation, the weight of his unfulfilled desires crashing over him like a tidal wave. When they finally pulled apart, Alex's mind was a whirlwind of emotions, exhilaration, guilt, and a deep-seated fear of what he had just done. "I can't believe this," he whispered, his voice shaky. Ryan's gaze was steady, his expression free of regret. "It's okay to want something for yourself, Alex. You deserve that." The words offered a strange comfort, but they also deepened Alex's conflict. He had crossed a line he couldn't uncross, and the implications were too vast to fully grasp. They parted ways shortly after, Ryan giving Alex the space he clearly needed. As Alex walked home, the night air felt heavier than before, the memory of Ryan's touch lingering on his skin. When he arrived home, the apartment was dark, save for the soft glow of a lamp in the living room. James was asleep on the couch, a blanket pulled up to his chest. Alex paused, watching his husband's peaceful face. A pang of guilt stabbed at him, but it was accompanied by another, unexpected feeling, resentment. He thought about the months of distance, the nights spent feeling invisible, the effort he had poured into a relationship that seemed to have no room for him anymore. And then he thought about Ryan, the way he had looked at Alex, seen him, wanted him. As Alex slipped into bed beside James, his thoughts were a tumult of contradiction. He had always prided himself on his loyalty, his commitment to doing the right thing. But now, for the first time in years, he felt alive. The realization terrified him as much as it thrilled him. Alex sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his phone. Ryan's name hovered on the screen, his latest text unread but glowing like a signal flare in the dim room. James's voice called from the kitchen, his tone even, almost cheerful, as he asked about dinner. It was jarring, the domestic normalcy of it all, when Alex's mind was a battlefield of guilt and longing. He slipped the phone into his pocket as James appeared in the doorway, a dish towel draped over his shoulder. "You've been quiet," James said, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Something on your mind?" Alex hesitated, the weight of his secret pressing down on him. "Work's been stressful," he lied, his voice flat. James nodded but didn't seem convinced. "Well, don't keep it all bottled up. I'm here, you know." The words, spoken with such casual sincerity, stung more than Alex expected. He wanted to say, "Are you?" Because I haven't felt that in years. But instead, he nodded and mumbled something about needing to clear his head. He left the apartment without a destination in mind, his feet carrying him to the park almost instinctively. The same bench where he had met Ryan now felt like forbidden ground. He stood a few feet away, staring at the spot as if it held answers to questions he wasn't ready to ask. "Alex," a familiar voice said, breaking the stillness. He turned to see Ryan, leaning against a nearby tree, his arms crossed casually. "I wasn't sure you'd come back here," Ryan said, his expression soft but tinged with curiosity. Alex swallowed hard, his emotions roiling beneath the surface. "I didn't plan to. I just needed to think." Ryan pushed off the tree and stepped closer, his presence as steadying as it was dangerous. "And? What did you figure out?" Alex met his gaze, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "That I don't know who I am anymore. That I don't know what I want." Ryan nodded, his understanding palpable. "It's okay to feel that way. But you need to ask yourself one thing. What are you staying for?" The question hit Alex like a bolt of lightning. What was he staying for? Habit? Loyalty? Fear of the unknown? He thought about James, about the years they had spent together. There was love there, or at least there had been. But was love enough when the connection had withered into routine? "I don't know," Alex admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Ryan reached out, his hand brushing Alex's shoulder in a gesture that felt grounding rather than provocative. "Then maybe it's time to figure that out. For you. Not for him. Not for me." The simplicity of the statement unraveled something inside Alex. For so long he had defined himself by his relationship, by his ability to maintain stability and avoid conflict. But in doing so, he had lost himself. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that," Alex said, his eyes clouded with uncertainty. Ryan smiled faintly, his hand falling away. "No one's ever ready. But it's better than staying stuck." The honesty in Ryan's words was both comforting and devastating. For the first time, Alex saw the possibility of stepping away, not just from Ryan, but from the life he had been clinging to out of obligation. When Alex returned home later that night, the apartment was dark except for the faint glow of the television in the living room. James was seated on the couch, a glass of wine in hand. He looked up as Alex entered, his expression guarded. "We need to talk," James said, his voice steady but strained. Alex nodded, sinking into the armchair across from him. For a moment, neither spoke, the silence thick with unspoken words. "I know something's been going on," James said finally. "I don't know what, but I can feel it. You've been distant. Distracted." Alex's stomach twisted, but he forced himself to meet James's gaze. "You're right. I have been. And it's not fair to either of us." James set his glass down, his eyes narrowing. "Are you going to tell me why?" Alex hesitated, the truth balancing on the edge of his tongue. But when he spoke, it wasn't with the confession James expected. "Because I've been unhappy. For a long time." James's expression softened, though his eyes remained guarded. "And you didn't think I'd want to fix that?" Alex sighed. "I didn't know how to tell you. And I didn't know if it could be fixed." The honesty hung between them, heavy and unrelenting. For the first time in years, they were talking, really talking, not about logistics or responsibilities, but about the heart of their relationship. By the time the conversation ended, they both knew things couldn't continue as they were. They agreed to take time apart, to figure out what they wanted, not just from each other, but from life. As Alex lay awake that night in an empty bed, he felt an odd mix of sorrow and relief. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, he felt like he was moving toward something instead of away from it.